Hey all, this is Ron Coddington from Military Images Magazine, coming to you live on a Tuesday evening. Hope you all had a good day, and thought I would talk to you a little bit tonight about one of the research projects that I'm currently involved in. So we'll give folks just a minute or so to come on, and while that's happening, I'll remind you about this weekend's big event, the DC Photo Show, which is being held at the Marriott, the Dulles Marriott near Dulles Airport in Virginia, Northern Virginia, and hope that you can make it out. Hey, Jim, how are you doing tonight? Thanks for coming on. The show is this weekend, Sunday the 13th, starting at 8:30 in the morning. On Saturday, we will have a couple of events. Weather permitting, we will be at the Balls Bluff battlefield for a tour, and excited about that. And then on Saturday evening at 7 o'clock, we'll do Civil War talks. We have 3 collectors speaking that evening, and I'll be unveiling the spring issue of Military Images Magazine. All this brought to you by Doug York of Civil War Faces and yours truly. So, hey, Jimmy, glad you're here. Thanks for dropping by. Anyway, this weekend is the big show. I hope you can make it. The issue, as I mentioned, the spring issue of Military Images, I'll be debuting that at the show, and it will be available for sale on Sunday. For those of you who are subscribers, thank you very much for subscribing and for supporting us. Your issue will go into the mail on Monday. And if you're a digital subscriber, you'll be able to get access to that at any time. So for more information, go to militaryimagesmagazine.com. So as we're getting some folks coming on, I'll say one last thing, which is we are simulcasting on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. So however you get your social media, you can get these broadcasts. So if you're on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. We could use your support in spreading the good word about Military Images. So tonight, I want to talk to you about what I was working on this morning, which is a neat image that is part of the collection of Matt Oswalt. And Matt had a gallery a couple of issues ago on secession cockades, which was an image of civilians wearing those familiar ribbons. And in our summer issue, we're going to have a collection of his Mississippi images, his Mississippi soldier images. And this is one of them right here. And I should tell you up front that this image has been lightened quite a bit. For those of you who caught my Scanning 101 program a few weeks back, I showed you how you can use contrast and color to bring out some of the details of the images. This one was really, really dark, and so dark, in fact, that I really, the contrast really lightened it up. And if I come in closer, you can see his military buttons that are covered in gold gilt paint. For those of you who are new to collecting, know that in images like this, which happens to be a tintype, photographers or colorists would often add tinted, they would tint the images with color. And when the war began, using gold to tint buttons, numbers, insignia was a fairly popular routine. Nowadays, collectors like me and others, we cringe a little bit because the gold gilt paint is so heavy that it oftentimes obscures the information. So you can see here, the dabs of paint have covered over the tops of the button. The good news here is that he has signed this on the back. There's a period signature with his name, which is William Murphy Inge or Ang. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. It's I-N-G-E. You'll also note that William has some insignia on his collar. Again, really difficult to see, and the gilt paint covers most of it. But you can see a couple of bars marking him as an officer. And then there's another insignia over here. I can't quite tell what it is. It might have been two more bars. It could be some sort of a shield. Hard to tell, but it's a dark uniform signed on the back by Inge in his role with Mississippi Cavalry. So an interesting image that caught my attention. So as I was doing the research to find out more about this, and my research was assisted by Matt Oswalt, the owner of this photograph, who provided some information. And Matt had some interesting notes that I saw in the information that he sent me. And he mentioned that Mr. Inge lived in Corinth, Mississippi, where he was a lawyer, and he and his wife, Flora, owned Rose Cottage in Corinth. And Rose Cottage is a rather interesting place, and it has a part in the Civil War. It has an important part, actually, in the Civil War, because in early 1862, it was the headquarters of Albert Sidney Johnston. And those of you who know Shiloh, those of you who know the Civil War or General Johnston, at the Battle of Shiloh, Johnston is mortally wounded when he's out with his troops, and dies, I believe, about 30 minutes or so after he is wounded. So there are some interesting firsthand accounts that talk about his injury. Inge or Ang is placed on the scene or nearby. One of Johnston's staffers mentions Ang in a news report that appears in a Mississippi newspaper in April of 1862. He doesn't say that Inge was with Johnston, but he does mention that Inge was in the vicinity before Johnston was killed. And so what we do know is that after Johnston's death, he is taken back to Rose Cottage, which is Inge's home, previously the headquarters, and now it's something of a funeral place where the body of Johnston is laying in an impromptu state, sort of laying in state for a couple of days. I see, I'm going to stop my narrative for a minute here. Jeff Jambrone, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Jeff, is telling us that the Mississippi Department of Archives has a letter written by him to Governor Pettus from Corinth concerning a company he was raising. Something definitely to check into. I'm still in the beginning of my research, so Jeff, thank you for that tip. It's much appreciated. I'll look into that. So Rose Cottage, in fact, the fact that Jeff is on here, I could easily turn the program over to him and have him fill in a lot of the blanks. But according to this 1862 report, that places William in the vicinity of Johnston, or at least in some proximity to him. And then later on, knowing that his body was brought back to Rose Cottage. There's at least one document that I found, a newspaper report, a post-war newspaper account that mentions that William accompanied the body of Johnston to Rose Cottage. That's the only reference I was able to find, and I haven't done enough research to find out that's true. But as you know, for those of you who engage in research, it's good to collect all of these various accounts and then try to stitch them together and separate them and find out what is true, what is possibly not true. And you're connecting the dots and doing something of detective work to try to prove the the veracity of the various accounts that you find. This particular account that notes that William accompanied Johnston's body back to Rose Cottage also notes that his wife, Flora, and another individual, another woman, wrapped Johnston's body in a Confederate flag in preparation to be shipped to Louisiana for burial. So another interesting development there. So at the center of all this is Rose Cottage, the home of William. And he has this, it becomes sort of it's sort of one of those moments where you have someone who has a home that became part of the war. It was not, I'm sure it wasn't something that was planned. It was something they never thought about, that the place that they lived would become the headquarters for a well-known and respected general, and also the place to hold his body temporarily before it was shipped. So a very interesting tidbit of history. A couple of other tidbits that you may be interested in connected to this photograph. One of them is that in 1867, so close to 5 years after Shiloh, Johnston's body is removed from Louisiana to Texas for burial. William remained in Corinth, Mississippi as a lawyer. He dies in 1900. I think he is about 70, late 60s, about 70 years old. And the house burns, Rose Cottage burns in 1920. And Rose Cottage, you'll find a plaque, at least I found a plaque online, state of Mississippi plaque mentioning Rose Cottage. And there's a little engraving that shows the portico of it. So all of that happens in 1920. Rose Cottage disappears due to fire. And then in 1925, Flora, who reportedly wrapped the body of Johnston in the Confederate flag, she dies, ending these sort of the story of these three characters: William, Flora, and General Johnston. So that's the lowdown on this image. As I mentioned, there's more research to come, but because I was excited and interested in this image and what I was able to find and what Matt provided today, I wanted to share it with you so that you can see what a work in progress is like. What will eventually happen at this point is the research will continue. I'll be able to check out some of these details and try to come to some conclusions. And then I'll write up his story, which might be a couple hundred words, and then attach it to this photograph, and it will be published in our summer issue. At the moment, we have 18 Mississippi images, Mississippi soldiers, that will be featured in Matt's gallery. So I'm super excited to be able to share them with you. And the research continues. So stay tuned for more. Jeff, thanks for the comment. I agree. It's a beautiful photograph. And thank you so much for listening, for watching, and for supporting Military Images. Have a great night.